Today we will discuss about the erroneous ideas about the self and Pancha Kosha, the five sheaths. So we will try to cover it in a single class. Okay. Ignorant people identify the self with external things such as their children, house, and wealth. When those are injured or lost, they feel that they themselves are injured or lost. Some who are thorough materialists consider the body to be the self and cherish the erroneous notion that the self is endowed with such characteristics as youth and old age, birth and death. Other materialists consider the sense organs to be the self and cherish the erroneous notion that it is blind or deaf. In Panchadashi and in Vedanta Sara, it is described thoroughly. There are again others who consider the prana or the mind to be the self and believe that the self is hungry or thirsty, or that the self is full of doubts and desires. Some Buddhists, uh, these are idealists, those Buddhist idealists, one sect of Buddhism belong to the school of Yogacara. According to them, the stream of ideas, Vignan or Vijnana, alone is real. Okay. So they think uh, and everything is non-existent. So they think the stream of ideas, the stream of thoughts, vritti, is only real. Buddhi vritti, or the modification of thought of intelligence, is real. Only everything is non-existent. They confuse Atma with its reflection in the Buddhi, which is merely the individualized ego or the doer. The nihilist refers, just a moment. The nihilists, Shunyavadi, they refer uh, actually Shunyavadi or Madhyamika Buddhist. This school of Buddhism, which maintains that everything is void. Everything is void. They describe the self as non-existence and argue that while searching for the reality of the self, they see nothing but the pale ivory of the void. But according to the Vedantic seers, all these notions of the self belong really to the category of the non-self. They are mere objects like a pot or a cloth, illumined or manifested by Atma or pure consciousness. Even who describes Atma as void or non-existence needs consciousness to perceive the void, isn't it? The very consciousness by which the soul is denied is Atma. The very consciousness by which the soul is denied is Atma. Therefore, Vedanta emphatically states that the self or Atma is consciousness, which is by nature pure, eternal, and blissful, and which is the witness and illuminer of all illusory entities from the external object to the internal ego or the void. Atma is the illuminator of the void, Shunya of the Shunyavadi, illuminator of my ego, the small I am doing, I am taking the class. Who knows I am taking the class? That is Atma only. So why Atma is not graspable to us? Vedanta philosophy believes that there are sheaths covering on Atma in physical level or gross level and in inner level or subtler level. And Vedantic philosophers have made these seeds into 5 categories. Okay. Vedanta analyzes the non-self into 5 koshas or sheaths, namely gross physical seed or Annamaya kosha, the sheath of prana or vital air force called Pranamaya kosha. The seed of the mind is Manomaya kosha. The seed of the buddhi or intelligence is Vijnanamaya kosha. And the seed of bliss or Anandamaya kosha. They are called sheaths because, like sheaths, they conceal Atma as if, as, not really, as they have concealed Atma. They are figuratively described as one inside the other. The physical seed being the outermost and the seed of bliss, the innermost, very near to Atma. The real meaning is that one sheath is finer than another. As a finer entity permeates a gross one, so the finer sheath permeates the grosser seed. Clear? As we saw that water is finer than earth, so in the earth there is water. Then fire is finer than water. Then air is finer than the fire, and space is the finer among all. So space or akasha is permeated in everything. Clear? So the thing is, the real meaning is that one sheath is finer than another. Okay. Thus, when it is said that the sheath of the vital force is inside the gross physical sheath, it really means that the former is finer than the latter and therefore permeates it. Atma is the finest substance. Atma is the finest substance. It is detached from the sheaths and permeates them all. The effulgence of Atma shines through all the sheaths, though in varying degrees according to their destiny. Thus, the sheath of intelligence manifests more of the luminosity of Atma than the sheath of the mind. Through ignorance, a man identifies Atma with one or more of the Kosha or sheaths. As this ignorance, stubborn, persistent, and hard to overcome, Vedantic philosophers take considerable pains to describe their illusory nature and exhort the aspirants to negate them. Only when that is done, that is to say, when one cultivates total detachment toward them through discrimination, is the true nature of Atma revealed. When true neti process works and we can negate everything with the proper discrimination or vichara, then only Atma reveals to us. Now discuss about some Annamaya, Kosha or physical body. Actually, this sheath which constitutes the gross physical body is produced by the combination of the gross elements and consists of flesh, blood, bones, and other ingredients. Dependent upon food for its existence. It lives as long as it can assimilate food. Clear it? It is not seen prior to birth or after death. So it has prior existence, uh, uh, absence, pragabhava, and pradvangsha bhava, post distractions absence. So its existence is transitory and its virtues are ephemeral. It is changeable by nature. Therefore, the body cannot be the self. The ignorant identity themselves with the body. The book learned with the combination of the body, the mind, and the self. While the calm man of discrimination regards the self as distinct from the body, distinct from the mind, and distinct from the ego. As long as a man does not give up this mistaken identification with the body, he cannot experience the bliss of freedom. He ever so erudite in philosophy or science. The body can be a help to the soul if it is regarded as an instrument, just as a house is a help to its rider. So once again, I'm telling the body can be a help to the soul if it is regarded as an instrument, just as a house is a help to its indweller or a horse to its rider. Now we will discuss on Pranamaya Kosha or the sheaths of prana, the vital air force. This sheath is finer than the gross physical sheath and impels the latter to action. A modification of the vital force, it consists of 5 pranas, enters the body after conception, leaves it at the hour of death, and produces the feeling of hunger and thirst. An insentient and limited object, the sheath of prana, cannot be Atma. The omnipresent Atma cannot be sheathed or covered by prana because the Atma is the all-seeing witness. Now the Manomaya Kosha or the sheath of the mind. This is the finer than the sheath of prana. The self identified with the mind feels the diversity of I and you and also experiences the difference of the names and forms in the outer world. Clear? Please make it note because I am making it in a nutshell. In definitions of Vedanta, in the same chapter, I took 6 hours class. The whole 6 hours class, I'm capsuling it today in half an hour, in 30 minutes. So all the points, please try to note it. Okay, all the main point. So the Manomaya Kosha helps us to distinct I and you and also experiences the difference of the names and forms in the outer world. Now, the seed bed of desires, means vasanas, good and bad, the mind impels the senses to activity for their fulfillment. The phenomenal world has no existence outside the mind. আমার চেতনার রঙে পান্না হলো সবুজ, চুনি হলো লাল. Even Albert Einstein, the father of the theory of relativity, he also believed the whole world exists in the mind. I am, that is why the world is. Okay, so the thing is, the phenomenal world has no existence outside the mind, and which is a product. The mind is nothing but the product of ignorance. The mind, agitated by desires, becomes aware of sense objects, cross and fine, enjoys them, and also becomes attached to them. The mind alone is responsible for the illusory differences of caste and social position, as also of the notions of action, means, and the end. Who says that you are a Jain, I am a Hindu, he is a Christian? In the outer world, it is not written. If any unknown person sees anyone else, it's not possible to differentiate. But my mind, who knows it, that mind propels us to differentiate all the objects. Okay. Stained by passion, greed, and lust, it creates bondage. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha, and then moksha also. But mind is the cause of bondage. All the bondage we feel in the family, all the bondage we feel with our body, all the bondage we feel with all the articles I have possessed, collected from since my childhood, and feel attached with it. And I feel attached with all innocent objects, insentient object who has no feeling or sentient, as if sentient. Who creates that attachment? Our mind. Okay. So the thing is, so mano eva manushyanam karanam bandhamuchay. That mind only shows the way to liberation and blessedness. The purification of the mind through the practice of discrimination and dispassion, means sadhana chatushtaya, is the goal of spiritual discipline. साधन की उद्देश्य मोक्ष नहीं, मन को तैयार करना. The goal of any spiritual discipline is not to get liberation. They only prepare our mind to realize our eternal liberation. In the opinion of Vedantic seers, the mental sheath cannot be Atma because it is endowed with beginning and an end. Which has a beginning, that should be end. That is the thing. Which has beginning, which has birth, he has death. Who celebrates birthday has to celebrate death anniversary. This is reality. Who believes my body has taken birth, I have no birth, he has no death also. And yadrishyam tajjadam, which is seen, that is inert. Which is smelt, that is inert. Which is touched, which is touched, that is inert. Which is hard, that is inert. Yadrishyam tajjadam. That is the conviction. And it is subject to change and is correct. Why? Jayate asti vardhate viparinamate apakshyate vinashyati. Which has taken birth, it has 6 modifications. Born, stability, grows, then graph down, then decay, and then death. That's 6 modifications there should be. And is characterized, this mind is characterized by pain and pleasure. It belongs to the category of the object. Now the Vijnanamaya Kosha or the Buddhi, the sheath of intelligence. Buddhi, the determinative faculty, is like the mind, a function of the inner organ and therefore a product of prakriti or matter. Though insentient by nature, it appears intelligent and conscious because it reflects chit or pure intelligence. Chit portion. Sat, Chit, Ananda, the Chit. This reflection of pure consciousness is Buddhi, is called the Jiva or individualized soul. Again, I am telling. This reflection of pure consciousness in Buddhi is called Jiva. Jiva means the individualized soul, whose chief characteristic is I consciousness. I am taking the class. I am listening to the class, that I consciousness. It is the subject to the law of karma. It assumes different bodies determined by the desires of previous birth and performs good and evil actions. Atma identifying itself with the sheath of intelligence and experiences misery and happiness also in the waking and dream states, not in deep sleep states, okay? Because their absence wipes out all such erroneous feelings in the dreamless sleep or deep sleep. It is through ignorance that the upadhi or conditioning of jivahood is superimposed on Atma. Atma means the pure self. And that is why Atma appears to be a doer or enjoyer in the relative world. It may be connected that the superimposition on account of which the Supreme Self appears as the Jiva through delusion or otherwise is without beginning and hence cannot have an end, means Atma. Therefore, the individuality of the soul also must have no end. Clear? It must go on forever. How then can there be liberation for the soul? मुक्ति कैसे होगा अगर ये भी अनादि होगा तो? हमारा जीवत्व अगर अनादि होगा तो मुक्ति कैसे मिलेगा? If our jivahood is eternal like Atma, then where is the space of liberation of the soul? In answer, the Vedantic philosopher says that the jivahood or individualization of Atma is not real, but is conjured up by ignorance. The unattached, formless, and actionless Atma cannot be related to the objective world except through delusion. Since the very notion of jivahood is due to delusion, it ceases to exist when the delusion is destroyed by the true knowledge of the self. Because of ignorance, a rope appears to be a snake, and it continues to be perceived as much so long as the ignorance lasts. But when the true nature of the rope is seen, the idea of the snake disappears. Avidya or nations and its effects such as time, space, and causality are beginningless for those who are subject to it. But when ignorance is destroyed by right knowledge, all such notions as the jivahood of Atma and its birth and death cease to exist, just as the dream ego functioning in sleep vanishes when the dreamer awakes. Atma, the only existent reality, cannot have any connection with the buddhi and thus become a jiva, for the buddhi does not exist from the standpoint of Atma. There cannot be any real connection between Atma and the sheath of the buddhi, just as there cannot be any point of contact between the desert and the water seen in the mirage. The false superimposition which accounts for the individuality of the jiva can be directly destroyed only through the knowledge of Brahman and not by any other means such as ritualistic worship, study of scripture, or philanthropic activities. This unitive knowledge attained through discrimination between the real and the unreal and relinquishment of the unreal enables the bound soul to attain liberation. Now, the Anandamaya Kosha, or the sheath of bliss. It is finer than the sheath of intelligence, is the subtle sheath of bliss. This bliss, however, must not be confused with the supreme bliss of Brahman. It is not as Sachidananda's Ananda. This Ananda, the modification of nations or Prakriti, it manifests itself by catching a reflection of the ever blissful Atma. The chief features of this sheath are pleasure and pain. Pleasure and rest, pleasure and pain is Buddhist. It is pleasure and rest. The pleasure that is experienced when one comes in contact with an agreeable object. The righteous man feels it in a small measure and without the least effort at the time of the fruition of his virtuous deeds. But the fullest manifestation of the sheath of bliss is experienced in deep sleep when one remains totally unconscious of suffering of any kind. After waking from the deep sleep, a man remarks that he has slept happily. A practical manifestation is known in the waking state when the senses come in contact with the pleasant objects, or in the dream state due to pleasant memory impressions in the mind. The death of bliss, or sheath of the bliss, is experienced in deep sleep when one remains totally unconscious of suffering of any kind. After waking from deep sleep, a man remarks that he has slept happily. Clear? So, the sheath of bliss, though close to Atma, cannot be Atma itself, as it is a product of ignorance also. Which fact can be known from the experience of unconsciousness in dreamless sleep. Because we only tell, oh, what a beautiful sleep it was. Mean that Ananda is drishyam. Ananda is felt. That is why it is inert. And Atma cannot be inert. Further, this sheath, like the other sheaths, is endowed with changing attributes because we are not always in the deep sleep. So it changes. But Atma is omnipresent and self-existent. The five sheaths are all modifications of Prakriti or primordial matter. They do not possess absolute reality. Whatever reality they are perceived to possess is due to Atma's being their substratum. It must also be remembered that the sheaths are not real coverings of the infinite Atma. They only appear to be so when the true nature of the self is forgotten. The light of Atma shines in varying measure through the different sheaths according to their composition. The true glory of Atma, unobstructed by any sheath, is fully realized by the aspirant when through discrimination and detachment, self-control and meditation, he no longer identifies himself with the sheaths or with any other modification of Maya, such as the sense organs, the mind, the buddhi, or the ego, but is completely absorbed in the self. Untouched by the five shades, witness of three states, waking, dream, and deep sleep, Atma is the unchanging and unsilhouetted reality, knowledge of which enables one to break the bondage of the relative world and attain supreme blessedness. It may be contended that after the negation of the five shades and the mind and ego as unreal, one finds nothing but a void, the utter absence of everything. What entity then remains with which the illumined soul may realize its identity? In answer, it is said by the Vedantist that only after such negation can a man realize Atma, which is devoid of attributes, is of the nature of pure consciousness, and is the witness of the various modifications of Prakriti seen in the waking and the dream state, such as the mind, the body, and the senses, and also of their absence in profound sleep or in samadhi. It may be called contentless consciousness, in which both subject and object merge and disappear. It cannot be the void, for one emerging from the experience of self-knowledge shows a richer and enhanced personality. Atma or Brahman is, according to Vedanta, the real essence of man. After the realization of this all-pervading consciousness, a man discovers his true self, just as after entering the ocean, a river discarding name and form find its real source and ultimate goal. When the five shades are negated, the body, the mind, the buddhi, and the other modifications of ignorance, and the different reflections of the self in them are also neglected, And when all these illusory objects disappear, there shines the real Atma, eternal, omnipresent and all-powerful, realizing which within himself a man becomes free from sin, free from fear, free from grief, free from taint, free from death, free from anxiety, free from doubts, free from depression, and becomes the embodiment of bliss. Hari Om Tat Sat.